Visitors to Portugal are usually struck by how close the distant past can seem. The procession to honour Reina Santa Isabella, the patron saint of Coimbra, is a perfect example of this. St. Isabella was born towards the end of the 13th century, and every 2 years her life is celebrated in a splendid parade that links the medieval world through the Renaissance period and down to our own time. The sense of timelessness is even stronger when the crowds have left the square. In front of us, the 12th century monastery of Santa Cruz, in which lies the tomb of Portugal's first king, Afonso Henriques. During the Renaissance, it was embellished in a Baroque style, funded by the wealth of empire, and it now overlooks a square named in honour of the liberal revolution against the monarchy. In combination then, this is a representation in stone of the overlapping historical realities that are the foundations of modern Portugal. But Coimbra's origins lie even further back in time. The first known settlements here were during the height of the Roman Empire, and deep beneath the ornate cobblestones we walk on today can be found impressive remnants of this lost ancient city. This extensive crypto-Portugal was once part of the Forum complex and the administrative centre of a city known to the Romans as Aeminium. The city prospered under the Pax Romana and became an important trading hub, but after long centuries of prosperity, the Roman Empire began to disintegrate and Aeminium did not survive the collapse. The crypto-Portugal now houses a number of artefacts from that era, none so poignant as this milestone registering for all eternity the place of Aeminium in a collapsing world. Reading it now presents us with a stark question. What happened to Aeminium? This is the enigma that haunts the shadows of the crypto-Portugal, and for an answer, we need to go even further back in time. The Romans knew the westernmost region of the Iberian Peninsula as Lusitania and had named it in acknowledgement of the strongest of the indigenous tribes they encountered there. One of the local leaders, Viriatul, had inspired a long resistance to foreign incursion, but 300 years of grinding warfare had seen Roman influence gradually extended until, by the 1st century, the authority of Emperor Augustus could no longer be contested. The emperor then restructured the region as the imperial province of Lusitania, and a number of new settlements were established to cement Roman rule. One of these was Aeminium. It was built on a hill overlooking a strategic crossing on the Mondego River. The origin of the name is something of a mystery, but might be linked to one of the smaller indigenous tribes, the Aemiliae, whose existence is recorded in inscriptions discovered further to the south. Many of the early residents, though, were probably veterans from Rome's many military campaigns who had been honourably discharged and then hung up their armour in retirement. The settlement soon became a focus for Roman culture, and by 70 AD, the prolific author Pliny the Elder listed Aeminium as one of the more important municipalities of the province. This kind of recognition was important because individual cities were granted different rights and responsibilities by Roman authorities. Thus, residents in an acknowledged urban centre could gain significant privileges and tax benefits. Economically, at least, Lusitania flourished under Roman rule. Aeminium became an important transport hub. It was both a waypoint on the Roman road between Olisipo, modern Lisbon, and Brancara Augusta, modern Braga, and the Roman regional capital. In those times too, the Mondego River was navigable from here down to the sea. More importantly, the region was now linked into a much wider world, a sprawling empire of merchants, marketplaces, and hungry urban populations. The fertile farmlands of Lusitania could be turned to the cultivation of new products for this long-distance trade. Vineyards were planted and were soon producing high-quality wines for discerning customers. Olive groves were established and produced bountiful harvests. The quality of Lusitanian olive oil became widely recognised, and wealthy Romans were prepared to pay a premium price. Modern archaeologists have discovered fragments of Lusitanian amphorae from Hadrian's Wall in the north to the borders of Parthia in the east. So, for as long as the sun was shining, great fortunes could be made here. But where were these great fortunes being spent? Some 10 miles to the west of Aeminium, another settlement had been founded at about the same time and given the name Conimbriga. It has been suggested that this name reflects another smaller tribe, the Conii, and the word was then linked to the Celtic term briga, meaning a settlement. Chosen more for the beauty of the site rather than a strategic location, Conimbriga also flourished under the protection of the Roman peace. The surviving ruins are quite extensive and provide a window into this opulent world. Conimbriga could boast all the elements Romans deemed necessary to civilized existence. The centre of political life was the Forum, complete with a cryptal Portugal, a basilica, curia, and commercial precincts. Just outside was an amphitheatre to stage public entertainments. An aqueduct supplied the city with water. There were several luxurious bathhouses. An effective drainage and sewerage system ensured adequate sanitation. Several palatial houses have been excavated, which could boast such modern conveniences as central heating for chilly nights and indoor gardens for moments of quiet contemplation. Every available square foot of floor space was covered with beautiful mosaics, which are as vibrant today as when they were created. In distant Rome, emperors came and went, some bad, some good, and some insane. But on the westernmost edge of the known world, Conimbriga and Aeminium flourished together in the midst of the bounty produced by the rich province of Lusitania. The desire in the Eternal City for both staples and luxuries only seemed to grow, and the people living in Lusitania might have hoped this idyllic lifestyle could last forever. But by the 3rd century, the future was beginning to look more ominous. From the 2nd century AD, the Pax Romana came under increasing pressure from several quarters, and many of these challenges are still familiar to us even now. The more things change, as they say, the more they stay the same. The Romans found themselves facing new and exotic diseases carried into the empire by long-distance trade. These created destructive plagues that fell particularly heavily on urban populations. At the same time, global climate change was impacting on civilizations across the globe, hampering food production in many northern areas so that famines became more and more frequent. These problems intensified a growing crisis in public finances as wealth concentrated into fewer hands and so became more difficult to tax. Yet there was also another challenge that was growing quietly as social cohesion was undermined by the spread of a new religion, Christianity. Not only did this create conflict with supporters of the old gods, but equally volatile debates between different Christian sects. These myriad social and economic challenges came at a very dangerous time. Trouble was brewing on the northern frontier. The changing climate had prompted a mass migration of Germanic tribes, who themselves were being forced westward by the Huns. In 376, these tribes crossed the Rhine River and Roman forces were unable to force them back. Once the frontier had been breached, the tribesmen spread out into the territories of the empire. Rome attempted to rally its resources and restore some sort of equilibrium, but the authority and strength of the emperors had dwindled, and the Eternal City finally fell in 476. The most fertile parts of the empire were occupied by the victorious tribesmen, while the glory that was Rome faded into a poignant memory. The collapse of central Roman authority was felt even in the distant Iberian Peninsula. In 409, Germanic tribes crossed the Pyrenees and divided the Iberian Peninsula amongst themselves. Lusitania fell to the Suevi, who probably came from the Danube region in what is now Austria. Although they set up their capital in the old Roman administrative and religious centre of Braga, their dealings with the local population remained tense. In general, Goths sought to maintain their cultural exclusivity in this foreign land. Centralised authority was partial at best, and poignant signs of the real-life consequences of this chaos include hoards of coins buried by unknown citizens who had presumably attempted to hide their wealth from the invaders and were later unable to retrieve these life savings, presumably for the direst of reasons. Many cities built defences or improved walls that had been neglected in the long years of peace. Conimbriga was one of these. Unfortunately, though, the preparations proved insufficient, and the walls were breached by the Suevi in 465 and again in 467, with devastating results for the inhabitants. In lawless times, the hilltop settlement of Aeminium had much to recommend it. The topography made the walls far more defensible, and many people in Conimbriga chose to relocate 10 miles to the northeast. Along with their goods and chattels, these refugees brought with them the name of their former city. In time, even the word Aeminium fell from use and was largely forgotten. To account for this transformation, we need to take a small step backwards and to consider perhaps the most momentous legacy of the final centuries of the Roman Empire, the rise of Christianity. From its origins in Palestine, the apostles spread the message of Christianity out across the Roman Empire. By the end of the first century, there were perhaps 7,000 active Christians out of a total Roman population of some 60 million. The number of Christians grew steadily through the subsequent decades, and the new religion gradually began to attract the attention of authorities. Early Christians suffered periodic persecution, which culminated at the beginning of the 4th century under the Emperor Diocletian, who saw the new religion as an obstacle to his goal of unifying and strengthening the empire to confront the numerous external threats facing it. Persecution only seemed to consolidate the Christian movement, which continued to grow in secret. The fall of Diocletian brought a change in official policy. His eventual successor, Emperor Constantine, saw the Christian Church as a potential ally and, in 313, issued the Edict of Milan to officially legalize the religion. In 325, the emperor encouraged the convening of a council of bishops at Nicaea, at which they finally agreed a common system of beliefs, the Nicene Creed, which became the definitive statement of Christian orthodoxy. Constantine took on the role of a perfect Christian monarch, and in 380, the Nicene version of the faith was declared the official religion of the empire. Although unsupported tradition insists that Iberia was visited by evangelists in the 1st century, solid evidence only confirms Christian communities in the region from the mid-3rd century. The first actual name recorded is that of Bishop Paterno of Braga in 389. A decade later, an ecclesiastical council was convened at Elvira. The main topics under discussion were the ongoing friction both between rival groups of Christians and between all followers of the new faith and those who clung to the venerable gods of their forebears. Early Christianity was above all an urban religion. The first congregations had grown up in the towns. The bishops too were located in the cities, and as Christianity emerged from persecution, these men came out of the shadows to take on an increasingly prominent role in civic affairs. Their rise in status coincided with the increasing weakness of central authority, so that in many communities, bishops found themselves taking on leadership roles and blending their spiritual mission with a new secular authority. The arrival of the Goths in the peninsula only exacerbated an already difficult situation. Although the Germanic tribes had converted to Christianity, They followed Arianism, a different interpretation of the faith, which totally rejected the Nicene Creed, so the Arian newcomers were often in religious opposition to the wider Orthodox population, which could put the local bishops in a very uncomfortable position. Conimbriga provides an illuminating example. Under the Roman shield, the city had grown into a prosperous and luxurious urban centre, so it was only natural that the local bishop would reside there among other members of the wealthy elite. By the 3rd century, authors confirm the Bishop of Conimbriga to be the leading ecclesiastical figure in the region, with other local churches, including Aeminium, coming under his authority. But when the population of Conimbriga sought refuge in Aeminium, the bishop was at their head. This would profoundly influence the development of the city, and it is possible to reconstruct this process from clues left in surviving documents. Church councils were a gathering of the most learned and literate people in society. Fortunately, the busy scribes kept copious records of their activities, including lists of attendees and the decisions reached. Lusitanius attended the Council of Braga in 572 and signed as the Bishop of Conimbriga. Other documents from around 580 confirm that Conimbriga was the primary seat of the diocese, with Aeminium as one of several dependent churches. Less than a decade later, though, the situation had changed. Posidonius appeared at the Third Council of Toledo as the Bishop of Aeminium. An explanatory note adds the telling phrase Aeminium or Conimbriga, indicating a struggle between geographical accuracy and a desire to maintain the status of the more widely recognized name. But by the time of the next Toledo Council in 633, the struggle had been resolved, and Wojtyla attests to the council proceedings as Bishop of Conimbriga, even though modern archaeology confirms that the city itself had in fact been abandoned. Over time, Conimbriga came to be used to describe not just the bishop, but the entire community. Then, during the Middle Ages, the Latin word was gradually shortened and smoothed into the easier to pronounce Coimbra, as it exists today. Meanwhile, the name Aeminium fell out of use and was forgotten, even as the original settlement of Conimbriga subsided into ruins.
Roman Aeminium was primarily an administrative unit which formalised the rights and responsibilities of residents within a pluralistic, world-spanning empire. Individual cities, even neighbouring cities, might possess very different privileges, so residency could convey valuable advantages. But as the Roman Empire weakened, central authority devolved onto local figures, often the bishop. At the same time, the rise of Christianity and the struggle between opposing interpretations of the faith had also changed the way people viewed the municipality and their place within it. Rather than simply conveying a legal status within a wider Roman world, the city had narrowed to become a community linked by a common faith. The bishop was the city was the bishop. Membership to this community was no longer a legal convenience, but rather had become the defining aspect of an individual's identity.
Which brings us to the original question of what became of the lost city of Aeminium. As we have seen, Aeminium transformed into Conimbriga, then into Coimbra. Each of these name changes reflected a much wider cultural shift from the Roman through the medieval and down to our own modern world. Yet all of these cities are still here, just below the surface, providing deeper and deeper layers of meaning. And as an historian, I do find such solid foundations in time oddly reassuring.